This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wisdom of the Soul with Janice Mary. I'm so happy to have my good friend Lorraine back with me. She has so many questions, so I thought we would just have another conversation about connecting to the soul. And today we're going to expand a little bit on one of my posts. I wrote a post called The Soul Can Take the Sting Out of Rejection. Rejection is really a very, very painful time for all of us. And, she had some questions, and so we thought we'd start there. Hi, Lorraine. Good morning.
Hi, Janice. Yes, this is my favorite topic. The pain of rejection, breakups, that kind of thing. And it once took me 8 years to get over someone. And when they finally came back, it was too late, of course. But I couldn't believe that it lasted that long. And I didn't have too many moments of being in my soul. It was just pretty bad. So when I saw your post the other day where you said in your therapy practice you've learned that it takes about 3 months of, the pain, the real pain, but then after that you should be getting better and starting your new life. Well, can you connect that to the whole soul, connecting with your soul thing, and tell me, would that have helped me, or what would I do the next time if I ever get involved with anyone again?
Well, hopefully that won't keep happening, but it happens to all of us. And yeah, in my practice, I've noticed when people come in after rejection, they're devastated. I mean, they come in probably the most severe pain that I've ever seen people go through. And I always tell them that it is a really, really difficult time. It really almost looks identical to me as when somebody loses somebody they love, like from death. So if I was sitting there with a client, I sometimes would not be able to tell whether this person died or this person actually,
Wow.
it's that severe. It is.
It's good to hear you acknowledge that, because when I was going through it, I didn't get the same amount of sympathy as if someone had died on me, because we weren't married. He was just the boyfriend, and they just said, oh, it's just a heartbreak. But it did feel like a death.
Yeah. And, people have the same symptoms as a death, too. I notice they can't eat, they can't sleep. They're almost a little disoriented. They can't think clearly. And that's the exact same symptoms you get when someone dies. People are very disoriented. They're almost in shock. And, when you're rejected or you lose someone you love, we really go through the exact same pain and the exact same grief steps. And I'll tell clients that, because they'll walk in and they'll be like, this is ridiculous, and I'm so upset over a relationship. I'm being so ridiculous. I can't sleep. I can't.
Yes, there is that. You do think that you're being ridiculous, that other people are doing fine with it, and you're just being especially awful with it.
Yes. And like you said, you're not really getting that much support, because people will be like, oh, he wasn't good for you anyway. I never liked him, or,
Yes.
somebody better anyway. And, when you're in that kind of pain, that reaction is just not very helpful at all.
And what is the pain? Is it the rejection?
Yes, it's the rejection. So what happens when we're rejected? And I kind of look at it this way. When our little ego is young and we get rejected, our ego is almost like a little detective, and writes down every little instance that we got rejected and records it. So every time we've felt rejection in our life, our body remembers it, and a part of us remember it. So every cumulative time we get rejected, even little rejections, when you call somebody up and they say, and you ask them to go to a movie with you, and they say no, that's a form of rejection. So every single time that happens, and depending on our sensitivity, it affects us in a very, very deep way. So we want to have a lot of compassion for ourselves, which we often just don't have.
Yeah, and that's what you teach, to treat yourself as if yourself were your best friend, and you wouldn't want your best friend to suffer.
Right.
So so this soul energy is, when you're connecting, you feel good. Mm-hmm. Is it even possible, when you're going through a breakup pain, to get into that mode, to get yourself there?
It is. I mean, it definitely is. We have to go through our feelings and respect them and honor them. But when the soul is there, it's almost like in the back of your mind, you know, this isn't as important as it seems right now. So when you have your connection, even though you're upset and you're going through what you're going through, you have this sense that I'm going to be okay, that I am loved, that my life isn't going to be, you know, devastated by this. There's
Mm-hmm.
this other sense happening, like kind of in the background. And that really, really can buffer and help. And I always say the soul kind of buffers our life experiences.
So you're feeling that in the back of your mind. I mean, I guess that's what keeps you going through the breakup. It's
Mhm.
that
Yes.
somehow knowing.
Mhm.
Is that, should we think of that as our soul and try to bring it to the forefront?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think when you bring your soul into your awareness, when you give it some room, those feelings of self-loathing that come from being rejected kind of eases a little bit. So it's sort of like, you know, you're in all this, I hate myself, you know, I did this wrong in the relationship, I messed this up. And if you suspend that just a little bit, the soul can kind of come in and help you look at that a little bit with a little bit better perspective. So the pain is there, but again, the pain is just like a little bit more buffered. It's not as intense.
Should you kind of wait for the 3 months to pass first
You
before
don't
you?
have to. I mean, if you have a strong connection to your soul and you have this practice going, you know, people will meditate and they'll feel better, or they'll start doing another spiritual practice, like doing the book, The Magic, because every day with the magic, you have like something to do every day. So it kind of gives our ego a rest. So you can definitely do things to kind of get yourself out of it a little bit, but we do have to respect kind of what we go through in a rejection or a death. We have to,
Mhm.
you know, we're human and we want to respect our feelings and how we're feeling. It's just that when you have the soul, when you have that soul connection, you don't believe the self-loathing as much. You know, you just don't believe it. So when we feel rejected, we believe that self-loathing. We believe that to be true. When you're connected to the soul, you know that that's not true. You know
Mhm.
that you're a good person. You
Mhm.
know that you're loved. You know, you just have that feeling. So the rejection almost doesn't hit you as hard.
Mhm. And connecting to the soul, does that help put the focus back on your life rather than your life with that person?
Yeah, because it takes the pressure off of another person. If you're getting all your love and support from this energy, you really don't need it from another person. It's nice to have another person in your life. And, you know, we get lonely. We want to have people in our lives. We want to share our
Mhm.
lives. But it's not like a necessity. You know, some people I think feel like they can't exist if they're not in a
Mhm.
relationship. And there's nothing wrong with feeling that way. It's just when you connect to this energy, it causes you to be very, very present and
Mhm.
very much enjoying your life, no matter where you are. So whether you're in a relationship or not, you're
Mhm.
enjoying each moment of your life. So nothing becomes so critical.
Yeah. All right. So, is this what you tell your clients? Do you try to help them connect to their soul when they're going through a breakup?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much say to them what the soul says to me. So, you know, a lot of people are, you know, not familiar with this kind of connection, and I would never want to put that on somebody that isn't spiritual or doesn't believe in this. However, this what the soul says to me, I say to them. And so hopefully I'm giving them a little bit of a reminder because they have this energy within them. So as if
Mhm.
when I'm saying what the soul would say to them, it feels a little bit familiar. And hopefully that energy will kind of, you know, give it some room within them. But I
Mhm.
don't, you know, come out and say, you know, you need to connect to your soul energy. Unless they're a very spiritual person and they're working on that, then I would give more direction. But generally, when I'm sitting with somebody that's going through this type of pain, I ask my soul, you know, how can you guide me to help this person? And at the level that this person is at, spiritually and emotionally and developmentally, how can I help them? And that's where my soul's so wise and comes in right at the level that they need to be.
Mhm.
And it's different for everyone. For some people I'm just listening, for some people I'm giving a little bit more advice. It
Yeah.
depends. It really depends on that person, where they are in their
So
journey.
there's no general advice that you can give us about the soul and disappointments in life? Because that was another question. Just, how, aside from breakups, we all go through lots of things that hurt. And,
Mm-hmm.
if the soul is right there and can help us, so this breakup advice probably applies to everything that
Yes.
hurt.
Yeah, absolutely everything. So if we know there's two energies that live within us, we have the ego energy and the soul energy.
Mm-hmm.
I would always say choose the soul energy because that's loving and kind. But people are not used to that energy, so they're not even looking for it. So you can't look for something that you're not aware of. So the first step is you have to be aware that this energy exists that you can tap into to feel better.
Right.
Once you know it exists, you can then challenge your ego that keeps playing over and over. Mm-hmm. And what I tell people mostly, and this is really what my first book was about, The Forgotten Friend, was to not listen to it. You can't listen to this ego voice. It plays this horrible record of all of our imperfections, and it's not wrong. It does categorize things in a kind of a very exact way. So that's where it gets you. It reminds you of things that you kind of did do wrong because nobody's perfect. Yeah. So that's the hook. The ego always has truth to it, but it's not true. It's true, but it's not true. So we have to be very careful with believing anything that the ego has to say. So if you're in your ego and someone breaks up with you, you're going to believe what ego is saying. You're going to believe that you're no good, you're not pretty enough, you're not, you weren't a good enough girlfriend or a good enough wife, or somehow you're just not good enough, and you just kind of ferment in that wall of self-loathing. And it's a horrible, horrible place to be. And we all get there when we're rejected. We can't help for that not to come up. It's just that when that comes up, we really have to challenge it and say, I'm just not going to believe it. Sorry, not believing this. And, you kind of, sometimes you have to fake it till you make it a little bit and just say.
I was just going to say that. You just have to keep repeating it till.
You have to keep repeating it and say, you know what, this is that voice that we're talking about. And this is the voice I am not going to listen to anymore, because really, even if it was true, it's not doing you any harm. It's not doing you any good. It's just harming you. So if you're going to, so we have to challenge it. And I've gotten very good at challenging it because it took me a while to kind of get out of my own ego voice. So I got to the point where, do I really want to think these things again? Is this really true about me? Would I ever say this to anybody in my life? No. And so I got very good at getting out of my ego. And I used many, many different things to get out of my ego. And once you get out of that voice that keeps talking to you over and over, you begin to be able to be much more anchored in your body and much more present. Mm-hmm. And then you start to feel this different energy, and then that's when everything changes.
Would it also change the feeling that I really miss this person and I really liked being with him and I'm never going to have that again?
You know what it does do? It gives you a different perspective. And the perspective is that we're all one and we're all connected. And even though I can't share the same house with this person anymore, we are still connected in love, and that will never, ever change. So you don't feel that loneliness feeling anymore, and you don't feel you just don't feel that strong rejection anymore, because there's a knowing that we're all one, that you're no different than me, and I'm no different than you. And if we can stay with people, we can stay with them. And if we can't, we can't. I mean, some people's egos just get the best of them and make them crazy. And when people's egos get the best of them, me included at times, I've been difficult. When our egos are bad, who could live with us? If your ego is not under control to some degree, who could live with you? So it's very challenging for most people to stay in relationships if you have an out of control ego, because it's going to be the death of the relationship. Again, nobody's fault. It's not our fault. And the soul does not blame us for this, but it is just kind of a fact of where we are in relationships right now. And that's why I think it's going to shift and start to change. As people tap into this energy more, they're going to realize, oh, I'm okay all on my own. I don't need anything.
I'm okay in the relationship. I'm okay out of it.
You're right. Exactly.
And maybe you can go into the next relationship not as giving yourself completely over to that person, just hold on to yourself.
Well, in the soul energy, you can, because there's no risk of losing anything because you're one. So there's never a risk of anything. And you don't lose yourself because there's no need to manipulate somebody in a relationship to get what you need anymore, because you have what you need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just so ego related.
It's so ego based. And who talks a lot about special relationships is in A Course in Miracles. That there's been a few spiritual practices in my life that really, really hit home with me. And A Course in Miracles was one of them. And it talked all about, they called it the special relationships. And that's what I'm calling like ego relationships. And they talk about how it's never the home of love. It's the home of this horrible, out of control ego. And that really hit me. I was like, wow, that is just so true. But when I was doing A Course in Miracles, I was still in the beginning of my spiritual journey. So I couldn't understand like how to get out of it and stay out of it. And then if I did get out of it and I would go back into it, I would be even more angry at myself. It's like, so I can't even master this spiritual relationship. I'm just awful, not realizing that it goes in increments and steps.
So it's okay. You shouldn't beat yourself up if you fall back out of it.
No. And that's something, just over the last few years I've learned. I used to be very hard on myself as a spiritual person and someone very connected to her soul, that when I would go in my ego, I'd be like, well, what the heck? I'm no better off.
Yeah.
Right? So what I wasn't realizing is that I wasn't staying in my soul energy for a long enough time each day. I would go in, for a little bit, and then I'd pop back out. So if I'm staying in my ego energy most of the day, I'm just not going to be feeling so good. So I got to a point where I was staying in my soul energy for most of the day. And then it got to a point where I didn't need to stay in it as much. And now I've come back into the ego energy with the awareness of the soul. So, you go through many different stages when you connect with your soul. And so what I now feel is that the sense of going in and out from ego to soul is fine. And I have a deep appreciation now for the ego. And I have a deep appreciation for my experiences, because I no longer take them personally. It's like, wow, look at everything that I went through, and I can honor that, but I don't believe it. And I don't believe the harshness or the things that I used to come away with from. So, I was divorced, and I used to feel very bad about that. I don't feel that anymore. I feel like that was an experience I was meant to have. It taught me many, many lessons, but I could say that to myself, but I wasn't really believing it. Now I believe it, and now I can see. So now I go into my ego energy, and I can enjoy that, and then I can go into my soul energy and enjoy that. And that's a really fantastic place to be. And that's what I wrote a post this morning about that, because it's a wonderful realization that you don't have to beat yourself up when you are in your ego and you are in your
It sounds like a good balance.
It's a balance, yeah. Yep.
The stage that I'm at is I spend about 2 days sulking in my ego energy, but I get through it because I know that it's going to pass. Like, this too shall pass. It does. And then you go back into that soul energy.
Yeah, exactly. And you do different things to help you out. Like,
like what?
Miracles was a spiritual practice that helped me get out of my ego, because there was
What was?
The Course in Miracles was one.
Oh, okay.
Abraham Hicks was another. The Law of Attraction, because basically, so Esther Hicks, who channels spirits that kind of give her this really amazing wisdom. So it basically keeps you in a very positive mindset. So when I started doing that, I was having a bulk of time outside of my ego, because I was listening to a lot of her tapes and her quotes. So that kept me out of my ego. But the problem again became when I wasn't listening and I was back in my ego, it felt stronger than ever. So I kept, so I kept feeling like I was failing somehow. When my soul was giving me an opportunity to see the difference between being in the ego and being in the soul energy. So you can use anything to get into the soul energy that makes you feel good. Listening to Eckhart Tolle on YouTube can get you into that soul energy. Anything that gets you out of your ego is getting you into your soul energy and helps you to come into presence. And that is really very, very helpful. It's a helpful distinction between your ego and your soul, because you really do feel like you are your ego and you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You're not your ego.
Well, I compare my ego to, well, reality, because my ego is always saying, but this is reality. This
Yeah.
person is with another person now, didn't really want you anymore, and isn't coming back. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. That is the reality.
That is the reality. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's just when the soul comes in, the soul's so loving and kind and would say, you know what? It's just his ego that took him away from you. You know, you are connected and he'll always be with you on some level. But his ego looked at you and saw himself and wanted to split off from that. You know, and that's rejection. Rejection is seeing yourself in the other person and saying, no way, I've had enough of me. You know, I don't want to be with me anymore because you're, you know, you are reflecting me.
Oh, so he wanted to see something else.
Yes. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sometimes when we kind of can't handle being with somebody, it is actually the thing in us that we've split off that we don't want to have in ourselves. And sometimes it is just being with somebody that their egos are so out of control. It's abusive.
Yeah.
You cannot stay in it. So it could be a few reasons why you can't stay with somebody, but they're all very, very valid reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And the soul energy would never, ever want you to stay in a relationship here that's doing you any harm or any damage, ever.
Well, that's true. That's true. The way I look at breakups now, aside from the whole soul connection, is I want to honor that person's decision.
Mm-hmm.
And me sulking and carrying on and trying to contact the person is not honoring that person's decision and life choices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you have to honor other people.
Very evolved way to be, and a very caring way to be for that other person. You know, to take
Mm-hmm.
that into consideration when you're in a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm. But you do equate it, though, to the pain of losing someone to death.
Yes.
So
yeah.
that I found that so interesting in your post, because I would have liked to get that kind of sympathy or, you know, somebody to understand that. But
that's when people go through divorces too. It is like a death, and people are devastated, and they don't get the same support as when someone does die. And we need that support. So yeah, so a lot of this is an awareness. When you have a friend that just broke up with someone, know that they're in their worst moments with their ego, and they're saying probably the worst things they've ever said to themselves. And, you know, to really try to just be aware of that and help them through it, you know, which is just being there, no real advice, just being there for somebody, you know, is the best way to do it.
You mentioned to stay in the soul more often, you know, watch Eckhart Tolle on YouTube and, you know, the videos or whatever, or read. That should we do that as much as possible? You know,
definitely. I mean, I still will listen to him or Abraham Hicks, or I'll open up A Course in Miracles, and really that it just helps me to get right into my soul energy very, very quickly. I mean, I can get into my soul energy just by kind of thinking about it, so it's easier. But there's something about, you know, listening or reading that kind of wisdom that just really inspires you and opens it up really quickly.
It's like it's a helper.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes so much sense, and it's validating. So when I listen to Eckhart Tolle and he talks about presence, he calls it presence. And so I call it soul. I mean, it really doesn't matter what you want to label it. When I listen to him, it's validating to me, because what he talks about is what I feel and what I've come to understood. So it almost like gives me that validation that I need to talk about it, because it's new stuff. And, you know, I'm a therapist, so it's kind of a little bit out there stuff. So when you hear other people talking about it, it's like, oh, okay, good. So I'm not crazy.
Right. It's validation.
I'm not crazy, and this is real. And what I'm feeling and what I have been feeling for the past 10 years is very real. And it's very, very significant. And it's a huge, huge change for us. But I think it's a needed change because most people are listening to their egos way too much.
Yes, yes. The people who get angry quickly seem to be ego-driven people.
Yeah,
Like,
you're agitated, you're angry, you're depressed, you're anxious. That's the feelings that the ego will kind of stir up in us. So when
mhm.
you're listening more to the soul, you settle down, you hang out with your pets more often, you know,
Yeah.
you relax, you hang out
You
with your
settle down and you live it like
settle
Eckhart
down.
Tolle says, you live in the now.
Live in the now. And really,
Yeah.
I say that too, is that your soul energy is in the now. You can't feel your soul if you're in your thoughts. It's just not going to
Mhm.
happen. So the only way to feel your soul is to like get out of your thoughts and to be back in your body, and
Mhm.
to really try to connect and feel that energy. And in time, you'll just all of a sudden, it's a miraculous thing how all of a sudden every moment can feel so good, and then every moment
Mhm.
starts to feel loving, and then you just keep getting more and more information about different things.
Well, that's a good point, to be aware of all the good things that are happening. Just
Yeah.
as much as the ego is pointing out the bad things, the soul can point out everything that's good.
Yes. Yeah.
That's happening in the now. It's like right now I'm warm. I have food in my house. Everything is fine right in the moment.
Right. Really have nothing to worry about in the moment, but it's very hard for us to stay in the moment. We have things that we think about, and that's where the soul settles you down, because the soul will keep saying, everything's fine. You're fine. You don't have to worry about this. I got it. I wasn't able to get out of my thoughts until I felt like somebody was kind of guiding me and helping me and taking care of me, because I
Right.
felt I had to think about everything. I had to be in control, and I couldn't let that go. So there was no way I was going to get that record to stop playing until my soul kind of came in and said, "No, we got it. We got you. We got you back. You're
Yeah.
covered." You know.
And thinking about the past doesn't help anything. Having anxiety and worry, it doesn't help anything. It's
No.
crazy.
No, but we're very addicted to our thinking. We like to think, and there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with thinking. It's just when it turns on you, that's when you have to stop. You have to say, anytime I'm evaluating myself in a negative way, that's my ego, and I'm just going to stop. It's a waste of my time. Nobody's perfect. And we could just go on and on about how imperfect we are in our lives and our bodies and our homes and everything, or we can just have fun, and that's our choice.
Yeah.
It sounds simple, but it's not. It's not simple. It really does take a little bit of convincing your ego, yourself, to like pull away from this ego, to detach from the ego. It takes a little convincing and a little
Mhm.
bit of experience of the alternate.
And once you know that it works, that it can happen, it kind of builds on itself.
Yeah.
You've seen yourself get out of the ego and into the soul, and so the next time the ego is really bringing you down, you know that you can switch. You
Mm-hmm.
see, the more you see that happen, the easier it gets. It's like learning any skill, like roller skating or ice skating. Well, I stayed on the ice for 10 minutes last time. It can happen.
Yes,
So,
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. You really have to experience it. And once you experience it, it'll change your life. It's an amazing thing.
I'm at the stage where I give myself like overnight. I'm like, go to sleep. In the morning, you might feel
Mm-hmm.
better. You might be in your soul connection. This morning, I woke up and I was depressed, but I said to myself, well, I'm going to be talking to Janice at 9 o'clock this morning, and that is guaranteed to get me out of whatever stupid ego depression this is.
Mm-hmm.
And because I now know that there are things that will
Yeah,
change my mood.
right,
I
exactly.
know it now.
Yeah, you can think about the last time you felt that way and you did your collage and how much better you felt.
Yes.
So you can kind of like help yourself to remember, well, when I felt this way and I got out of my ego thoughts, I did much better So let me try it again, you know? And
Yeah.
then you kind of respect that, you know, pattern of thought that you have that leads to depression, to say, all right, you know, that's my ego. That's that record. So this is my record on depression. And it's okay. This has been my life experience. I want to validate that and say, you know, I haven't had it easy. And times when I want to feel a little sad for myself, but I don't want to injure myself. So I can feel it and then I'm going to let it go.
That's a really great point. Validate it, say, yes, you did have a hard time, feel it, but don't injure yourself.
Yeah, we don't want to like throw the whole ego away. You know, we want to respect its, you know, observations and, you know, we want to respect it and understand where it's coming from, because it isn't false. You know, there is truth to it in the human, in our human world. It's just we're so much bigger than this human spirit. So that's what we have to remember. So yeah, it's true on this level that I'm feeling depressed over these things, had these experiences, but yet I'm so much more, you know. So that kind of helps it. And so the soul would come in and say, yeah, you know what, that was horrible that you had to go through that, and I wish you didn't have to, but you've learned a lot from it. What have you learned? You know, how has it strengthened you? How has it expanded you? And look at you now, you know, selling, you know, photos online and starting this whole new business for yourself, you know?
I know. That is great, but sometimes the ego can be stronger and say, but so what?
So what? The strength of the ego is very, very strong, but the strength of the energy of the soul is stronger.
Yeah.
So
the strength for me when I'm taking pictures or making a collage, the beauty, that feeling of seeing beauty just overtakes me. There's nothing as strong as that.
Right. And you're in it. That's your soul energy when you're doing that. You're in your soul energy. That's what it feels like for you.
You've noticed, you see that in my photographs.
Yes, your photographs are beautiful, and they capture, in each photograph, there's something in it that like brings my eye to it, you know, and so there's always something in each picture that you take that has a little bit of your soul in it. It just is, I just can kind of see it in the pictures. It's really fascinating. So yeah, that is your when you're doing that, you're not criticizing yourself, you know, you're just in the moment, taking those pictures, and that's being in your soul energy. So, you know,
and time passes, I have no idea that I've spent 3 hours out taking pictures. No idea.
Exactly. You know, and I do the same thing when I'm doing posts, I'm writing, or I'm talking to people. Like, you know, it just goes by like a second. Yesterday, so 8 clients in a row, and I just sat in my soul energy, and I felt like maybe I was there for 5 minutes. I mean,
8? Oh,
yeah.
So you were definitely in your soul energy.
Yeah. And it's amazing though how when you're in that kind of energy, you know, nothing is stressful. It's just, you just go from one thing to the next thing. It's a beautiful pace because you're no longer evaluating every move you're making. You know, you're just letting yourself be you, and you're just waiting to hear, you know, some insight, or just, you know, really listening. And it really has changed my practice tremendously, you know?
Yeah, because if you're in your ego is going to criticize every move.
Yeah, and your ego starts to criticize other people, you know, which is the last thing that you want to sneak out, you know. So I'm training my new therapists that work under me. I'm always saying to them, you know what, you got to start with basic listening skills, because your ego is going to want to tell people what to do. Like, that's what we like to do. And when you have a title of therapist, you almost have a license to tell people what to do.
Yeah, you do.
People come to you to, you know, to say, well, tell me.
What can I do?
Right. And
so
nobody really wants to be told what to do, though.
No.
People want to work it out for themselves, you know?
So that's what you're telling the interns to?
Yes. Yeah. They have to develop the foundation of listening. Because when they do that, when they do reflective listening, which is when a client talks, you paraphrase back what they're saying. It keeps you so busy that you don't have time to let your ego take over. And in those moments, you really are more sitting in more of your soul energy. Now, they don't know that, but that's what's happening. You know, many therapists are very intuitive and very connected to their,
Yeah.
you know.
And for the client, they're being heard, which is really what they needed.
Yeah, I mean, people can figure things out for themselves for the most part. I do feel like, you know, if they don't hit into this energy, they'll get a little stuck. So that's why it's important for therapists to really connect to the soul energy to help people, you know, move out of that ego by telling them, well, that's just not true about you. You know, that's the only directive thing that I'll say to people, because my soul will kind of guide me to say, oh boy, you know, that's so not true about you. You are a beautiful person. And, you know, that's not what people are saying to themselves.
Mm-hmm. My ego likes to say you were stuck in it for 8 years of, you know, in the pain of the breakup, but it's not true. There were moments in those 8 years where I was a valuable person.
Yeah. And your soul would say, you know, that was 8 years of incredible learning and growing, and you know, take all the good that came from that, and every life experience you have, whether it's good or bad, is extremely valuable because it grows our soul. Whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, it grows our soul in the exact same proportion. So we think we have the judgment based on experiences, but the soul doesn't. Soul sees our entire experience here as being us growing, because we can't help but grow, and we do grow from pain, but we also grow from happy things too. So it's equal. It's not, you know, some people will say, well, painful experiences you grow more. If that's not really true, that's not really what the soul tells me. The soul tells me that you grow equally from both, but we need both to grow. You have to have the yin and the yang to kind of grow a little bit, you know.
When I look back at all my relationships, I do think about the things that I learned from being with them, like what kind of music they liked. That introduced me to, like, one boyfriend, it was the blues. I didn't even know what the blues was, and then I started liking it. Another boyfriend had a photography shop. Just one was a fisherman. Went out on his boat. So I can look back at all the relationships and see what was happy about it and how I grew from the happiness part of it.
Right. And the pain, you know, so you grow from both, you know, you really grow from both. And, you know, so when we see both experiences as valuable, we don't have to be so afraid of the good or bad experiences. You know, because some people are just as afraid of good experiences as they are bad experiences. I'll have a lot of clients say, all these great things are happening to me. Now I'm petrified because something bad is going to happen.
Oh, that's very common.
Yes, it's very common. Well, because it's true. You know, in life, we have good and bad. So what I tell my clients a lot is, you're right. That is true. We're going to have a handful of good experiences, and we're going to have a handful of bad experiences. And here we can't be in denial of that. You know, it's true. However, you know, when you have the soul to buffer it, no matter what you go through, you can ask your soul to help you. You know, so if you're scared or you have a health issue, you can ask the soul to sit with you and stay with you, so that you're never ever going through any of those things alone. I mean, what we have to face in life is not easy. You know, we come here knowing we have a short period of time, and we know that we're leaving, and how we leave, you know, is really kind of up in the air. We don't know that. So we need a lot of support and help as we go through each life stage, you know?
Yes, that's why I try to be kind to people, because I know we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, we're all in the same boat. We're all heading the same way. And, you know, we're here for very particular reasons. And we want to trust that that we're doing exactly what we're meant to be doing. And we are. No matter where you are, that's exactly where you're meant to be, you know?
That's a good point. I also like what you said about the soul can buffer the pain.
Yes. Yeah, because if you're, you know, I mean, say you're in the hospital, you have some health issue. You know, people have to work. People have their lives. They can't be with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But your soul is, and your soul energy is. And, you know, people in spirit and angels and guides and anything that you believe is always all around you. You're never, ever, ever left alone. And the more you can connect to that support system, the easier it is facing some of these challenges, you know. And then it also, the easier it is for us to know that our loved ones, even if they were alone at their time of death, that they were never alone. You know, nobody's ever left alone.
No, that's a good point. We can talk about that in another that's going to be my question for next time. The spirits around us, how we should be able to try to tune into that help, the angelic help.
Yes,
The
great.
spirit
That sounds great. Yeah, we should be
Okay.
wrapping this up, right? But as always, me and you could just go on for hours.
Forever.
Well, thanks so much, Lorraine, and
Thank you.
look forward to another chat with you soon. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Janice.
All right. Take care. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.